Alright, so we finally got gameplay, news, and a general dev video all about the Landsraad, the Deep Desert, and Deep Desert Combat, and a bunch of other questions were answered as well, and we also got to see the social hubs for the first time as well. And it feels so good to finally be able to talk about this stuff, and man, this is what Dune Awakening is. This is what I've been waiting to talk about for so long. Early game combat that we saw in the beta is just a literal small percent of what this game actually is, and this is the stuff I love. The vehicle combat with the ornithopters, from the spice harvesting with the carriers, and all of the guild play that is involved with these systems is phenomenal. And to the Landsraad as well, we finally got Landsraad details as well, which I can't wait to talk about. So in front of you, you're going to see a bunch of gameplay from the dev stream where they had a large scale test, I believe it was in the closed beta, of hundreds of ornithopters fighting each other. And man, it looked incredible. I can't wait for this kind of guild play where there's going to be these inter-faction conflicts. That's right, there is friendly fire in between the factions, because it is not a faction-based system. It is faction-based to a degree, for sure, but the way Dune Awakening works is that it is fundamentally going to have inter-faction conflict where you're fighting over control points, and maybe one guild wants that for guild placement over another guild because you'd get better rewards in doing so. So there's a motive or a motivation to compete with other guilds in your faction to help fight faction imbalance. And this is one of those things that is crucial to the game and not having effectively a Zerg culture, because there is that friendly fire system. On top of that, we also got to see spice harvesting in the Deep Desert, which I'll also put in a clip here, where you need to have A-tier comms between your guild players in organizing the spice harvester, the carrier ornithopters, and your ornithopters, and of course your dude that's going around on a bike placing thumpers down to distract worms. There's this whole synergy where you need to have really good communication within your groups, within your guilds, so you don't like lose vehicles, get eaten by the sandworm, etc. And that's same true with PvP, where you are fighting over these control points for the Landsraad. And more specifically on the Landsraad, since we can finally talk about it, is effectively a bingo board, and they call it, I think, a Cecil or something like that. I can't remember what Joel said. And on this bingo board, you're going to have objectives, both PvE and PvP. For PvP, it could be a control point in the Deep Desert that you set on for X amount of time, and that's going to create some contention for PvP, because it'll be notified on that Landsraad board for other players in the Deep Desert. They can be like, oh shoot, someone just captured the Atreides control point in this sector. By the way, there's I think 81 different sectors in the Deep Desert. It's a 576 square kilometer map from memory, which is absolutely insane. On top of that, there could be an objective to, you know, deliver spice, which is where the spice harvesting would come in if you're a PvE player, for instance. And there's this whole dynamic where you're competing not only against the other faction for the decree each week, which we will get onto, you're also competing for guild placement. So that means there's going to be tension between two guilds inside a faction that want said, you know, bingo control point or Cecil control point to get, you know, better rewards that week. As you can see on the screen here, which I will put an image of up, is on the Landsraad, on the left side and the right side, you have your placements for the factions for Harkonnen and Atreides. You obviously want your guild and Harkonnen to be at the top, because you want the juice, you want the good rewards for your players in your guild. Now there's going to be people competing for you for that placement. So that's where that sort of guild inner conflict comes in, which I think is really fun. I can't wait for the sort of politics and the drama and the just story that comes out of that unfolds. And this was something that I experienced in New World that I know a lot of people might not have liked, but I loved it. Was effectively, again, politics. There was this whole drama situation going on between guilds and companies where you would have people that were going off at each other, and it created this really lively, immersive experience where you created live stories in the game through the actions you did, right? And that is one of the core elements of an MMO, and why they originally had that MMO tag as part of the game, which has since changed, but they still do have the MMO element like that in the game, right? And you've got the social hubs, which we'll show a little bit of social hub gameplay now. is where you'll find advanced trainers, you'll find all of these other things like weapon vendors, you'll find a few other things there as well that I can't really mention, but I do have also, I also do have a full trainer location video dropping on release. So if you're worried or want to strategize where you get your trainers, that'll be dropping the minute the game goes live. But other than that, I cannot wait for this game, man. It is gonna be phenomenal. If you love the Dune universe, if you love guild play, guild conflict, guild drama, all that sort of MMO PvP systems, you will love this game. And again, vehicle combat is, in my opinion, some of the meat and bones of Endgame. There is, of course, infantry gameplay, and especially over smaller points of interest, infantry is going to be required, especially in testing stations in the deep desert. But when it comes to general large-scale PvP in the deep desert, expect mass-scale ornithopter battles, and I can't fucking wait for that, to be honest with you. It is going to be a truly exceptional experience, and I will see you guys on the June 5th with that. We're going to be streaming the hell out of this game. It's going to be incredible. It's absolutely going to be incredible. There's going to be so much content that comes from this game, and I really can't wait to see you guys there. Now, I do have also a build guide coming on June the 5th, which is going to be my early game to mid game build. It's not going to have in-game stuff. I can't really include that yet. I expect like my in-game build guide to be like the following week of release, probably around like June 10th, June 12th, when the game goes post early access release, right? But from June 5th, I'll have a mid to early game, sorry, an early to mid game build guide that covers my build using it's going to use a drill shot and a spit dart, two weapons that you guys haven't used yet in the beta, as well as, of course, a Karpov, what do you call it? The SMG, I keep forgetting the name, but it rips through shields. It's a great tool. And of course, melee as well. Now, again, I'm going to be streaming a lot of this game over on twitch.tv/MaleOreo, and I really just want to show you guys some of this vehicle combat, some of this in-game systems, and, you know, yeah, I mean, actually, here, perfect. We actually have an image of the Landsraad up there. I can show you guys Logitech coming through. So here is the Landsraad board, which I can quickly sort of cover right here. So it is I believe, a 5x5 grid. Yeah, 5x5 grid of tiles for houses, house cards, effectively. So, for example, House Hargel, House Whiters, whatever. I don't know how to pronounce this properly, by the way. Effectively, these would, when you hover over them, give you an objective. It could be deliver spice. It could be capture a control point. You would go out into the deep desert and do one of these objectives with your guild. In doing so, you would get power for not only your guild, but also voting power. And again, each tile that gets completed is a point for your faction. On top of that, you get guild rankings each week. Each week, these reset, that's important to note. And you can see the Landsraad term, like time left at the top of the screen, top middle. And what happens is when you get a full bingo, which is, I believe, 5 in a row, you get something called a decree voting or decree voting. And again, so the winning faction will get the decree voting. I need to mention that. So the winning faction gets to decide a decree for that following week. A decree is effectively a political gameplay law that will change the gameplay for the winning faction. So, for example, next week, because of the winning faction, let's say it was Atreides, they would get to import exclusive weapons through Atreides at the Arrakis, which is the social hub. I'm kind of starting my words a little bit here because it's quite late, but again, they would get to go to Arrakis, which is their social hub, because they won the decree, and they would get to import exclusive weapons because they won that decree. And that would only be for them for that week. So that's what drives the competition, right? And that is, same goes for Harkonnen. If they won, they would go to Harko Village and could import exclusive weapons. There's not only import rights, which is one of the decrees, there's many different decrees or gameplay rules that you can set. Now, I've only seen a few, for examples, one of them being Right of Salvage, and Right of Salvage is full loot PvP for that week. Now, full loot PvP, again, is not always active unless you die to a sandworm, so don't die to sandworms. But, again, full loot PvP would only be active if that term was voted in by the winning faction. The higher you rank in the guild, or as a guild in the faction, the more voting power you get. As you can see on the left, they have 5,030 voting power. and that would allow them to have a sway in the vote of which gameplay decree gets voted in for the next week. And this will change every week and be, again, competed for each week by both factions and guilds in the factions. As you can see, this is for both teams here, both Atreides and Harkonnen, have 4 in a row, in a column, or in a horizontal line on this specific Landsraad board. That means whoever gets House Hagel as their objective win would win the Landsraad that week. So this would create a point of contention, a point of competition that would be very competitive that week, because this is going to be very important in deciding who wins. And this is actually a control point, funny enough, so there would be a lot of fights probably going on at this House Hagel control point in the deep desert. And that sort of, again, creates that whole system where there's competition and there's, I guess, direct points of conflict in the deep desert, because the deep desert is massive, right? Again, the deep desert is like 576 square kilometers, so there needs to be some point of, I guess, bringing players together, and that's what the Landsraad aims to do, is bring players together for conflict, and it's done pretty damn well if you ask me. On top of that, you have spice harvesting. Spice, if you're wondering what spice is used for in in-game, it is used for everything. You need spice to get tier 6 gear, which is in-game gear that you can only get through the deep desert. And to do that, you need a lot of spice. And again, that's where your spice harvesting teams are going to come in. You're going to have people in your guild that organize themselves into carrier pilots, into spice harvester pilots, or are just general, like a thumper deployer, for example. It could be someone that just goes around the spice harvest, deploying thumpers to keep traction away from the, spice field, which is going to be very important. And you want to have comms with all of these people. It's very important and very imperative that you know everyone's role and when to, pull out of one of these situations. So as you can see in this gameplay in front of you, there's this very specific moment right when they pull out. They pick their spice harvester back up that's collected all of their spice to GTFO, right? There is a ringmouth worm, which is the big boys coming out of the ground to eat everything in its path. And it is important you get out that moment, otherwise you're going to lose a spice carrier, the pilots in the spice carrier, and most importantly, all of the spice you collected, which would be a big loss to lose. So this is going to create a sort of PvE tension, and I add in, imagine there's a PvP conflict on top of this as well. So not only are you harvesting spice and racing against the sandworm, you're now also fighting off other players that are contesting you and maybe trying to bring the sandworm. Instead of someone placing a thumper out of way of the spice field, maybe they're placing a thumper directly on the spice field to bring it faster. And there's this whole dynamic of, I guess, open world variety where you don't really know what's going to happen or expect, but you need to be prepared for those situations. And I want to leave the video here, as I've got a bunch of content planned for this game, but man, I cannot wait for Dune Awakening. I'll see you guys with the full release on June 5th. Peace.